All right, good morning, YouTube. This is Boxingwave, and we are back, man. I hope everyone is having a great weekend so far. Last night we had a couple of cards. Christian Mbili, Stop Selecki on the zone. I got to see the knockout this morning. It was in the first round. Of course, we know Deontay Wilder made his return against Tyrell Hurden, which is I'm going to speak on that on this video here. And tonight we got Jake Paul. He's going to be fighting Hurden Chavez Jr. And I'm not going to be able to cover that card. I know I don't really care for that fight, but I do care about the undercard because there's some decent fights on there. But I'm not going to be here. All right, just like I wasn't here last night. Just couldn't do live commentary this week. I'm sorry, guys. All right, but I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm actually going to be seeing the F1 movie with my mother shortly in the IMAX, so I won't be here this weekend really to cover fighting. I'm going to be out. But let's talk about the fight last night with Deontay Wilder. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Smash the like button if you enjoy the content. Deontay Wilder beats Hurden in the seventh round, stops him in the seventh round. Last night I watched the fight, but it was a big mess because I ordered it on Black Prime, right? Because they had it, like, I guess if you pay for the subscription of Black Prime, you'll just be able to watch the fight, right? So I wasn't home, so I had to watch something on my phone, and Black Prime is where I went to because it was $6.99, and I went on there and the whole broadcast is shut down. Like it just stopped playing. It stopped working at some point. And what I realized is that pay-per-view.com had it for $24.99. So I think they probably shut it down because they realized that people was watching this fight here and not having to pay $24.99 to watch it on pay-per-view.com. So it just shut down completely. But I did watch the fight because they had it on YouTube. Somebody was streaming it on YouTube and I was able to watch it on there. And that was that for me. I didn't watch the whole thing. It was very choppy. But I made sure before I made a recap of the fight. Like I didn't want to make a recap just based on what I saw. I wanted to watch the entire fight, which I did this morning. And, I wanted to give you guys a solid review because I really don't know where Wilder goes from here. But, if this is going to be his last fight, I want to at least be able to, make one last video on Deontay Wilder moving forward. So the fight with Tyrell Hurden. Now, Hurden, I had watched, I did a video on this fight the other day. And I had seen his fight with Richard Torres Jr. I remember watching that live, but I went back and saw some of the fights that's available on YouTube. And, you know, um, I know he was saying something like, I know the commentary in the fight last night was saying something that he was studying the Joseph Parker fight with Deontay Wilder and that he wanted to implement some of the things that Parker was doing from a defensive standpoint. I think Herndon did a very good job. And, he didn't over move. It's just that he did a good job defensively, didn't really get hit with many clean punches from Deontay Wilder. The problem is Herndon didn't let his hands go like the way Joseph Parker did. Joseph Parker was slip and counter, whereas Herndon was just slipping, barely countering. He would land a good jab here and there. But offensively, he didn't really have nothing for Wilder. So Wilder was able to be aggressive without any pushback. So it doesn't really tell us much about what Wilder is really capable of this at this point. All it showed is that when he's the initiator and he's walking the guy down and his opponent down, he's throwing a lot of punches at this point. He's going to be 40 soon. There wasn't much there. You know what I mean? I don't think his legs were the same. I don't think he's nearly as fast. I don't think the reflexes is what they were. And I just think that when he's fighting a guy like this on this level, he goes right back to being windmill Wilder. The Wilder that I saw in the trilogy with Fury seems like he put a lot more effort in that camp. And just the way that he was fighting there, I know Malik Scott wasn't there. But at the end of the day, Wilder he's getting up there in age. And when you have the power of the right hand, but you have to rely on your boxing, he's very limited. He's slapping a lot. Even when Herndon was against the ropes, Wilder is just throwing 6, 7 punches in a row, but he's slapping the side of the gloves of Herndon and not really punching through the guard like that. You know what I mean? Um, and there's so many opportunities. Like, where's the uppercut? We know Wilder doesn't go to the body that much, but you gotta open up. Like, you really want to open up on someone. You just can't just do the windmill thing in the corner. Like, that's just it's over for that. you know. And I know Hurden is not a top fighter by any means. I mean, he's a journeyman, but he at least had a good enough defense to where Wilder really couldn't connect. There was a knockdown in the second round by Wilder, but Wilder kind of hit him on the when he threw the left hook. It was more of an off balance thing for Hernan, so he fell. But Wilder didn't really connect with the knuckles, like he didn't really punch him correctly. It was more like it hit him like on a wrist area. You know what I'm saying? So it was an off balance knockdown, right? I'm not mad that they counted it, but it wasn't like a real punch. It wasn't an effective punch. There was a point where Hernan was doing well defensively, like I said, but in the fifth round he started to fade, and then Wilder would just open up on him more. But again, Wilder still wasn't really landing that many clean punches. Like, some of them were getting through, but they didn't really have the power that we're used to. And the sixth round, he was able to drop him again. But at this point, Hernan just looked very exhausted, starting the fifth round. And in the seventh round, Wilder connected with a right hand that backed up Hernan. And the ref just stepped in and stopped it. And Hernan probably could have continued, but for what? Like, he wasn't like being competitive. He's more like just surviving at that point. And he kept falling and just leaning. Like, he just didn't have the energy to continue. But Wilder overall, at this point, he's not at high level anymore, right? He's just not. And, I really don't know what he wants to do moving forward. I still believe, like I said before the fight last night, that Wilder is probably going to take a fight like this or two and then still get a phone call to get a fight with a bigger name. And I'm thinking, like, still to this day, like, I don't know about Anthony Joshua, because Anthony Joshua at least looks closer to his prime, and he's still fighting on really, really big cards and in big arenas, where Wilder fought in Kansas last night on a network where the connection wasn't even working that good. You know what I mean? Maybe on pay-per-view.com it probably was way better than the Black Prime one, but at the end of the day, I don't know about AJ anymore. I think that fight is just a dub. But if it's not AJ, I still believe that Wilder could get a phone call and get a good bag to fight a Derek Chisora, or like some of the other guys that's in his class that's kind of gotten older too. Dillian White is fighting Moses Atama, but if he wasn't, I could say, like, maybe that fight can happen now, or maybe a fight with I said Derek Chisora already. Maybe a fight with Gerald Miller or Gerald Anderson, the winner of that fight. you know. But there's still room to make money. But if he wants to be safe and he wants to be concerned about the health and not make these excuses about having injuries and stuff like that, I think he believes in his head that he's still like the same, and he's not. And once he comes to that sort of understanding, like, yo, you're not the same fighter. You can probably make money still boxing, but you're not the same fighter. You know what I mean? You're just not. And if you continue fighting at a championship level or fighting guys that's like around like top contenders, you're going to put yourself more at risk of getting hurt like really bad. But again, fighters are fighters. Manny Pacquiao's about to fight in a couple weeks. Like, this dude's like damn near, like, he's late 40s, So I get it. Some of these guys, they see the money. They're like, yo, I could still get in there and do something. You know what I mean? I mean, he still has power, but there's a major difference from when we used to criticize him before for not having the technique, and when you're old and you still don't have the technique. You know what I mean? It's different when you just can't solely rely off your athleticism anymore. So when we used to make videos and make contents criticizing him about how sloppy a lot of things look in the Arthur Spilka fight, or when we used to talk about Malik Scott getting knocked out by that awful non-clean connected punch or whatever. When we talk about fights like that and the performance of Wilder losing rounds, Gerald Washington, Luis Ortiz in a rematch, when you're losing rounds but you're getting saved by the one punch power. Now when you're slower, yes, you probably still hit really hard, but now that you're slower, everybody knows the weaknesses. You're fighting guys at a higher level in the end of your career. Zhilei Zhang, Joseph Parker, Tyson Fury. It's just gonna be harder to win those fights unless you're finding guys that still have names, but they're older too. You know what I mean? Um, the windmilling stuff was bad. And it's like watching Hurden fight Richard Torres. Richard Torres like a very aggressive puncher on the inside, right? But he's throwing them from all angles. So even if you're like in a high guard trying to protect yourself, Richard Torres is throwing uppercuts. He's hooking. He's throwing punches all over the place. You can't see him coming. Wilder was just like slap, 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 slap. Like it's just that's always been the thing. But it just doesn't look good anymore. And these guys are just not falling for it like they used to. You know what I mean? It's just not the same. So at the end of the day, like I still think he can make some money. Shout out to Boxing Beats and Rhymes. I was listening to a video of his, and he was saying how Wilder said in a presser that he wants to start a podcast and wants to talk more about mental health. And listen, the podcast money is there, you know, especially for the boxers or the actual athletes and the celebrities that do it, because you have something that people like myself don't have. You have the experience. You have stories to tell. You know what I mean? And you can mix that and drift and talking about other topics that's going on in the world. Like you can do that. Like that's what Cam and Mace do and all these other people. But there is room for that. But the more you fight and keep getting hurt, the more you'll be at risk and the more you're going to lose your motor skills. You know what I mean? So it's either things you can either do this, you could keep fighting, and just, you know, ride off to the sunset. You make millions and millions of dollars. Hopefully you're not in any bad financial trouble to where you need to fight. Or you can drift off into something else, right? And keeping the name there, sit down, have a microphone, talk stories, tell your side. You can do it. You know what I mean? I believe he's going to be a Hall of Famer, regardless of all the bullshit names he was fighting on those 10 defenses. It's still 10 title defenses as a champion. No, he didn't unify. No, he didn't fight some of the bigger fighters that we wanted to see him fight. But I think for him, what he did for an American boxing, it was exciting. I can't say that for anybody that's coming out after him. I can't say that for anyone that fought years ago. Like it's been years. It's been like 20 years. You know what I mean? Watching the guys from the 90s fight. Like those guys are gone. Tyson, you know, Holyfield, Bo, and all those guys from America. That was a really long time ago. And we really didn't get anybody that really got people excited. You know, we had some good fighters like Chris Bird and, you know, I can't really even think of anybody. You know what I mean? Like, I can't really think of anybody that really put on like Deontay Wilder. But at the end of the day, it was fun. And I just want to close out by saying this. I do think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. And I know like some of my most viewed videos ever is me criticizing Deontay Wilder. But that's because Wilder had a growing fan base of guys that wasn't here in the beginning. You know what I mean? That was talking about his earlier fights before he was a champion. I was a big fan of Deontay Wilder. I still am in some ways. I want him to win. But no one's above criticism. And he got it from me. You know, once he started doing the delusional talking, I checked him on it on here. We can't just let somebody just talk crazy and not just let them keep believing shit that's not true. That wasn't gonna happen over here. But I had fun over the years making content on Wilder. I had a great time. What he did, what Fury did, what Anthony Joshua did, um, what Dillian White did, Joseph Parker. Those guys made the heavyweight division mad fun for a long time. And I appreciate that. Like, I appreciate it was some good years, man. Good laughs, pay-per-views, good content, good moments. It was exciting. And even though he has a crazy style, the knockouts were so crazy that it got people hyped. And it was a good moment. And I think that alone can put you in the Hall of Fame, you know? Um, yeah, some of those names weren't really that good. His biggest, most challenging opponents all beat him. But, at the end of the day, it was still a good time. I had a great time over those years. All right. Um, anyway, I think I said everything I needed to say. I think there's room to still make more money for him in the boxing game or outside of the boxing game, the podcast game, whatever it is he decides to do. Maybe he starts acting. You just never know. Like, there's a lot of retired athletes that just begin acting. They start just showing up in movies. You know what I mean? You just never know. Um, anyway, that's my time. Yeah, have a good day. Please subscribe and please smash the like button as well. Peace.